guys, and welcome back to day 26 of Inktober. So this piece is one of the ones that I definitely struggled with a little bit. I think today when I was working on it, I just was not focusing and I wasn't paying enough attention for pretty much each step of the way. And it wasn't intentional. I wasn't having all these other things happening, but sometimes I just don't take a moment to gather my thoughts and just sit down and look at the piece and get ready and get in that right mindset to be able to work on a piece. So there's a few definite mistakes that I made. One pretty big one that I had to find a way to fix. And overall, just every step that I did, I just felt like they were just a little bit off, which was okay because like always, I like to look on the bright side of things and see what I can learn from it. And this was certainly a reminder that I need to make sure that I'm paying attention to what I'm drawing. But there was also the benefit where I do make this one pretty big mistake. Well, it was a mistake that happened over the course of many layers of ink washes, but ultimately it meant that I absolutely needed to find a way to fix it. And that allowed me to think of a way to adapt the design. And that's something that I have actually tried really hard to make sure that I don't do anymore, because when I change designs like that, when I'm working in the middle of a traditional piece, it almost always ends up much worse than before. And I think that I'm going to fix it. I think I'm going to make this piece better, or the piece that I'm working on, when I do this. And then I make that change and it's so much worse because it wasn't planned out. So I've tried really hard to make sure that I don't work that way. And I have everything very planned out and I don't make these snap decisions to change things. But at the same time, being able to work on my feet does allow me to be a little bit more adaptive to the changes as the piece is being made. And it also allows me to think of solutions to problems that I didn't necessarily even know. So for this one, I do end up needing to fix that mistake, but it's a design element that I really like, and I like how it ends up looking, so it's something that I could do intentionally in the future. So that's basically my very long-winded way of saying I definitely prefer knowing everything that I'm going to be doing in a piece. It turns out much better, but when I do have pieces that it goes a little bit awry and I find a way to fix it, it's always incredibly satisfying and exciting when it is an element that's a little bit new to me and that I can figure out how to utilize in the future. And now I can tell you what the actual mistake is. So when it came to the ink washes, I must have been just very rushed and a little bit distracted, but when I was doing the ink wash for her dress, I got so that it was really streaky for some reason. I wasn't getting a very even ink wash on her dress. So I'm definitely okay with letting the texture of the ink wash happen so that it has a very organic look, but I was getting it so that you would see these solid brush strokes, and then it would be areas that I would put too much ink and then I'd try to blot it up, and I put a shadow that was the wrong shape and I blotted up, and it just created a lot of really weird layering issues. So it didn't have that really beautiful broken apart textured look. It just had a very messy look to it, especially at the top of the bodice of her dress and where it faded into her skin. I was using a lot of reference of where, well, when I drew it, I was using reference. I was not using it when I was painting, which is another clear mistake. But I wanted it to be something where the design of the dress faded almost into like a sheer fabric on her collarbone and up over her shoulders. But I didn't really have a very good concept of exactly how I was going to execute it. And I tried to do a little bit of a gradient with the ink wash. And I do find that that's something that I struggle with a lot more than I do with watercolors. I find it a lot harder to get a very nice ink wash and a gradiated wash, that is, with these ink washes. So ultimately I had this really blotchy, messed up layering of ink washes on her bodice, and then when it faded up into her collarbone, I tried to fix it by adding these leaf elements. So in the end, it just ended up looking really messy and all over the place and way too many design element things happening where I tried to fix it. So I got to that point and it was like, okay, this definitely needs fixed. I really needed to find a way to reroute it, to take control of this piece again and make that look much cleaner and polished and finished off. And instantly when I covered up that issue, it just made this piece way cleaner. I mean, it still definitely has its issues. It was one where I was just feeling a little bit off. So I can definitely tell, and I know that I can do better in the future, but that was a huge weight off my shoulders. Sometimes it just feels so scary when I feel like I might have ruined a piece and I have this issue and I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to pull it out and fix it. And when I am able to make it at least a lot more better, it's always a huge relief. So I was so happy when I was able to clean that up, and instantly it was just like, okay, this is at least a lot better than it was, and we have control over the piece again. I had something that I could work off of to start making it much closer to what I had in mind. But I do think that I'm actually really happy with the way that I did draw her eyes and her eyebrows. That's one thing that I feel like there was several pieces in a row where I was just frustrated with the way that the eyebrows turned out. So it was nice to have one where I was like, yeah, I really like those eyebrows. So I think that I need to pay a little bit of attention to how exactly I made these ones work and how the other ones I didn't make them work. I think that I need to find a balance between drawing individual hairs and building it up that way and doing more shape-based ones. So I think that I've done both where I've just gone in with straight black and I filled it in and just made it a solid shape. And I've also done ones where I've gone in with individual hairs, and both of those are just not the perfect solution for me. So I do still need to work on that a little bit, but I will take the victories where I can find them, and I do like this one. Even though her eyebrows are super tiny, I do like how it did end up looking. So when I finally got to the point that I was using the white gel pen, I had a few things in mind of how I was going to utilize it. So I knew that I wanted to do this star effect on the area that I blacked out on her dress, where it would fade into the rest of her dress, where I had this vine pattern going on, and I really like that. I have realized that I've been going about how I utilize this white border, this white pen in my pieces with kind of these two different plans of attack. I've been using it to outline things so that I can really differentiate the way that they are overlapping within the piece to make them pop against each other, which I really love. And I especially love using it on dark objects where it's a dark object on top of another dark object. I can use that so that you can instantly see the border and they're separate and they're no longer grouped into one shape. So I've been using it that way, but I've also been using it as a highlight. And I find that sometimes I get the wires crossed a little bit where I'm doing it one way for most of the piece, and then I use it for the other application in another area of the piece that no longer makes sense for the other option. So for this one, I had it a little bit of both, like I mentioned, where I had the light coming in from the left-hand side of the piece. So I added a highlight around some of the shapes on the left side of her, but I was also using it a bit to pop out where her arm overlapped, or her chest overlapped her arm, that is. And because I'd already used it to show this highlight coming in, it definitely looked off and it looked wrong. It looked like there was a conflict of how it was being used and how the lighting looked like it was being hit. So I had to go back over that with a black pen and just cover that up and clean it up. And that definitely helped so that it made sense again and there wasn't this split confusion of how that gel pen was supposed to be demonstrated. But that just reminded me that I need to be a little bit more aware of how I'm thinking about how I'm going to use it and what the best way is to make it happen in a piece when I want these two different effects to have happening. I want to be able to think it through so that I make sure that I get the most out of both of them. But working on this piece in this kind of weird foggy mood where I wasn't paying attention, it definitely makes me excited for tomorrow, for being able to make tomorrow's a lot more attentive and correct and precise. So I find that when I make mistakes like that, it always lights a fire under me to be able to work on the next one to fix that issue with my next piece. And that is it for today. I do have the Kickstarter for Lumina, which is the art book that'll contain all of my Inktober 2017 pieces. If you'd like to own that, I have a link down in the description that'll take you over to my Kickstarter. I also have a link to my art shop where you can get art prints and buttons and all sorts of art goodies. So if you'd like to help support me, this is a great way to do it with either of those options. And I do post daily Inktober videos, so I'll be back tomorrow with another one. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.